Hey, what's going on YouTube? It's Logan here, and today I'm going to be taking a step back from the recent two videos I've made, and I'm going to be making a total beginner's guide to Python. From the beginning, I showed in my last video, or my first video, how to download Python, but for the purposes, since you guys are new, I'm going to show y'all how to install it too. I'm just going to show where y'all can install it from. I'm not going to go through the process of installing it because it's pretty easy. I'm going to show y'all one thing. That's about it. I went more in depth with it in the other video, but I'm going to go ahead and just do it for y'all now. So if you type in python.org, or if you just type in Python to your search browser, the first thing that should come up is python.org right here, and you're going to click on that. Okay, whatever operating system you're using, when you go to downloads, it should be right here. If it's not, you just click download and you can click which one you want to download it for. For me and Windows users, we'll just click this right here. And once it's done downloading, we just click on this and open it, and you press yes. Or mine isn't going to let me, but basically I'm not going to uninstall mine. But so basically, whenever you go to install this, don't just press install. There's going to be this little button down here that says install. Add pip to path, or add Python to path, or something similar to that. And you need to make sure that you click that little box, because if you don't, then in the future, when you get further into Python, it could cause problems. So you just might as well do it now before you find out in the long run. So I'm not going to go much more into that because I made an entire video, for like an entire 20-minute video going over setting up Python. So right off the bat, I want to, instead of doing what I was doing with my last video, if you are completely new, you can use the Sublime Text Editor and Git Bash terminal that I helped y'all create in the first video. But since this video is directly for brand new people, I'm going to use the software that comes pre-downloaded with Python. Whatever version of Python you have, you just type in this idle, and this is what will come up, and you click on this, and it will give you this console right here. And if you come to File and you press New File, you can actually use this. I don't use this right here. You can use this to type out, but it's much easier to visualize for me, to type it out all onto a file and then run it. Okay, so what we're going to do right off the bat is we can see this right here, and we're going to save this file as a name. I'm going to save it in my quick access because I don't care about it. And I'm going to name it hello. I'm going to name it hello world.py. And I'm going to save it as that. So what we're gonna go over first is, because the only reason I asked you to save it is because the first time you try to run it, if you don't save it, it's going to make you save it anyway, I believe, with idle. So you might as well just do that first. But so yeah, right off the bat, I want to start with this print function. Oh, by the way, before I get started with that, at the end of this video, I'm going to be showing y'all a quiz that I created. It's only 5 questions. It's pretty simple, but if you can answer those questions pretty easily without needing to Google, or without having to really type it into a code block and then run it. If you can just see it and know what it is just by looking, then you're doing pretty good right now for the basics. So it's not very difficult. But like I said, I don't want this video to be too long because I know you'll have things to do in your life. So we're gonna jump right into the first thing on my to-do list, and that is the print function. As a programmer, the first thing everybody learns, and it is almost one of the most important things we use as programmers, is this print function. As you can see, when you type in print, if you type it in with a capital P, it will not work. It won't turn purple like it was. So what we need to do is we're going to type it in lowercase, you do 2 parentheses, and then you can go in there to edit the print. So basically what this does is, when you run this print function, this print method, basically what it does is it prints out to this console right here whatever you typed inside of the print. with quotations around it. So if I say hello world, this is the first thing most people, when they're coding, they type in. So hello world, and if I press run right here, you can also press F5. That's what I'm going to do instead. If you press F5, as you can see, it printed hello world, and it's pretty cool. You're going to use this a lot. Like I said, you are going to use this to print out data, different types of data too, ranging from very long arrays to, which you probably don't know what that is yet, but it'll make sense once you get further into Python. But all right, so we've now made our first print statement. All right, guys, pat yourself on the back because this is where it gets good. All right, now I'm going to teach you something called initializing and using variables. Okay, we just made a print statement, right? But say we want to print a value that we haven't created yet. So what if we have a variable? Okay, I'm just going to name a variable. I'm just going to type out the word variable and set it equal to something else. You can make this whatever you want it to be called. You could say age, right? You could say age equals 5. And then if you print age, you'll see that when you run it, it printed out 5. And so that's one of the things I'm going to go over with, just so y'all can have a basic understanding of what I'm doing. I'm going to kind of go over the number 3 and number 2 at the same time. So I'm not going to change the variable name. I'm just going to keep it as age. But so I just said my age is, say I name my age, I'm 21, right? This right here is what we call an integer in Python, int. We classify as int. As you can see, that's purple. Integers are basically whole numbers, negative or positive, and then we have its brother and sister, and that is called a float. A float value is anything that has a decimal that isn't a whole number. As you can see here, when it's printed, even though you should be a whole number, the computer does not round that up to a whole number. Okay, so it's going to be known as a float. All right, but now we have something called a string. As you've seen before, I put those quotation marks and I put hello world. That is known as a string. So if I run this by itself, you'll see that it's not going to print out anything because there's nothing inside of this. It's just empty. Okay, so what I can do is if I type out my age is 5, even though I put an integer inside of this, it reads that as a string. So if you're gonna, what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna run this, and you're gonna see my age is 5. Okay, but here's the cool part about variables. Okay, say I'm going to put this inside of this variable. Okay, now I'm going to make another variable. I'm going to name this one string, and I'm going to name this one age, okay? And what I'm going to do here is I'm going to say input, as I have here, input, and then you put whatever you want them to input. Input your age, please. All right? And what that does is now we can also put the integer thing around it, because remember what I said is that if you can use that int to specifically tell the computer what you want out of this, because if you try to put a string, if you try to type out my name, if you try to put a letter in there that isn't a number, it will throw an error. I can actually show you that now if you guys want to. So it'll say input your age, please. I'm going to say G, and it's going to throw an error saying invalid literal for integer with base 10. That's because G is definitely not a number. So if I type out, but see, if I didn't have this there, it would still let me. It would let me put the G. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to say age, and then I'm going to put I'm gonna put string and then comma h. This isn't the only way you can do this, but basically what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna print out both of these together, and you're gonna see that. So what is your input your age, please? I'm gonna say 21, and then see now it says my age is 21 because it combined. It basically added these together. It's almost equivalent to doing this right here. I think this might throw an error, but I'm not too sure. Let me see. Yeah, it's going to throw an error because you cannot add a string and an integer together because that doesn't make sense. How can you add a letter to a number? But yeah, and that's not actually the only way you can do this. So you can do my age is, right? And you put that in quotations, and then you put a comma here. And now we don't need this because now you can just run that. And it says input your age, please. I say 21. And my age is 21. See, you can do that in multiple ways. So, yeah, well, I've only gone over string, integer, float. If you have any curiosities about any of these that I've gone over and you have questions about anything I've gone over in this video, do not hesitate to ask me down in the comment section below. So I'm going on to the next thing. All right, okay, well, I'm going to keep this because we can use this. Okay, so right off the bat, you see this next thing called comments and multi-line string / comments. Okay, so say you're working with multiple people, right? And say you have a ton of code. Say I have this a lot, okay? And say these all had different things like age, hair color, different things, right? You could put comments in between these that would tell you what they are so you know what you're looking for whenever you're coding. Like, so if you're coming back to fix something, you know what that block of code was for. So I can say input for age, right? And say if this one said hair color, I could say input for hair color. Of course, this wouldn't work because you can't have the same variable over and over again, but I mean, it probably would. It would just reassign it, but you know what I mean. So basically, that's what a comment is. And what's cool is that when I run this, you'll see that it immediately asks me input your age. You see how it doesn't say, it doesn't try to do anything with this. So as soon as I take this off, you can see it's not red anymore. If I try to run this, right, I'm going to get an error because it's going to say invalid syntax because it's going to, well, normally it wouldn't say that. If I didn't have that there, I don't think it would say. Yeah, no, it would say invalid syntax anyway because it's going to read this as a basically as a variable, but I haven't set it equal to anything, so it's going to go, what the heck? But yeah, so you can have comments, and anything that you type after a hashtag will not be read by the code. It will not become it will not be interpreted by the interpreter. So like say you could put one over here, see how it's after this code. Heck, I could put it literally right next to it. And if I run this, you'll see that it will not see that it's there. It does not know that's there at all. Okay. So, and that's actually really cool. So when you're testing out things, right? What if you don't necessarily want to print something out anymore, or if you want to just take away a block of code, you can do something called comment something out. Okay. So you can run this again, and it will say, please type your age, but see how it didn't print it out this time because I commented it out. It now no longer reads this line of code. And that also falls into something else I wanted to go over. Okay, so multi-line string / comments. Python is one of the only languages that doesn't have a multi-line comment. Okay, so basically you see how you could do this. Some other languages you could do something like this and it would comment the entire thing out. So like it would make it all red. But in our case, for Python, what we can do is we can go after this and we can put 3 quotation mark. I mean, if we put, and then everything after this will not be considered a commented out. So say you wanted to have an introduction on your code to tell somebody about what the program does, you can do something like this. If you wanted that to be really long, say it was this long, for somebody can understand what the program does and instructions on how to use it, you can do something like that. See, you also can use 3 full-size quotation marks. It doesn't matter which one you use, and you can actually make these way longer too. See, it doesn't end. It ends when you tell it to end. So if I keep doing this, it keeps getting bigger and bigger. And the thing is you can actually read this too as a block of code, as a string, because it technically is still a string. It's not just a comment, but it's not going to act as a string until you basically make it. So if I make this equivalent to a variable and set it equal to that, and then say I do print variable, you'll see that when I save this and I run it, it's going to print out that long list of nothing. You see how it starts here and it literally just goes up all the way up to here. That's because that literally is all this white space that's being stored inside that string. And if you remove it, if you remove that and then you save it and you run it again, you'll see now it's printing out all of that. Okay, so I'm going to move on from that because that took quite a minute. So now I'm going to go on to the different integer and float equations. Okay, so as you can see here, we also have something called string equations. That is, as you can see here, we have all of these different equations we can use for integer and float, but string, I'm going to go over string first because it might be easier for y'all to understand. So what we have is something called string concatenation. Okay, and what that means is that you can add 2 strings together. So if I do string 1 equals hello, and then I do in quotation, and I do string 2 equals world, right? With a like right there. And what we can do is we can go print, or actually we can even take this a step further so you can understand that how much manipulation you have. You can say string 3, because say you don't want to change the individual value of these. You want to keep this string and you want to keep this string, but you want to combine them. So what we could do is we could say string 3 equals string 1 plus string 2, and then we can print string 3 as right there. And then when we print that, what you'll see is right here, it'll print hello world. It's not going to have a space in it because there's no space here. Like, see, if I put a space there, it'll have a space. But yeah, so that can be useful in some usages. I don't use it very often in my line of work, but I'm sure I've used it before. I just can't remember a specific instance I've used it. But yeah, you can only use the plus sign. See, if I try to minus these, it's going to throw an error. Say unsupported operand for string and string. The only operation that works for strings is the plus sign. Okay, so on to the next thing. We can actually keep this, and I'm going to change this to integer, and integer 2, and I'm going to change this to integer 3, integer 1. So basically what I'm going to do next now is I'm going to show you that I might, but so these equations are all going to be the exact same for, I guess I can get rid of this. So say num1, okay, I can set this equal to 1, and if I want to multiply another number by another number, I can make that equal to this variable. Well, that's also something cool that you can do, is that you could have num1 and num2, right? And say you make num1 equal to 10. You can make num2 equal to 3 times num1, right? And if I print this, what do you think it's going to print? It's going to print 3 times 10. So that messed something up. Yeah, it did. If I print it out, now you can see it printed out 30, and that's not the only thing we can do this for. There's multiple equation types. That's what I'm about to show you right now. So we have the plus sign. I can do plus, and that will do, what do you think? 10 plus 3. You would be correct. 13. And then I can do the division sign, right? And then if I save this and run it, it's going to divide 10 it's going to divide 3 divided by 10, so that's 0.3, right? And that equals a float now, not an integer anymore. We created a float data type by dividing an integer by another integer. What you can also do is we have something called the modulo. I'm going to go over that last, but it's basically, think of division, right? How we just divided this and we got this value. What this does, no, I'm going to go over it now. It's fine. So basically the modulo, what it does is it takes 3 divided by 10, and whatever remainder you get from that division product, it gives it to you. You see, that is the remainder that it was given. So that is what it's going to give you, is that as a whole number, because that was the remainder. See, that works really cool. There's once you get into if, elif, and else statements, the conditional statements for code, you'll understand modulo a little bit more. But we also have our minus, as I was saying, you can use your minus. All right, so you get your -7. And then we also have another one. This is, you might just think this is two multiplication marks, but no, this is like, oh yeah, also it's the asterisk, if you can't see that correctly. The multiplication is an asterisk, not an X. Okay, so if you do 2 asterisks, what it's going to give you is it's going to take 3 to the 10th power. Basically what it is this is creating an exponent. Right there. Like if I go to my calculator and I do 3 rows to the I don't think I can do it that high, but with this calculator. So y'all know what I mean, though. You're basically it's just another way of doing simple math. Because at some point you're gonna get see, there you go. It's the same thing. You're gonna get some. If you're going into data analysis, you're going to see that. You're going to be seeing big numbers like that, way bigger than that probably. So then we have our last thing, this right here, this plus equals 2 sign. So the best way I can explain that, right, is we have something, say we have num equals plus equals 1, okay? What that's going to print out is, if I classify the variable num as the number 5, basically what that's going to print out is 6, and I'll explain why in a second after I run it. Oh, sorry. I gotta save that again. If I run that, you'll see it's going to print out the number 6, and that's because this right here, you can do this, it's like an accumulator, basically. Basically what it does is it takes whatever variable that you put here, and it adds it. You can also use any of the other things, like you can use the negative sign, you can use the multiplication sign, and you can use it to basically see how it subtracted 1 from 5. So basically it's like an accumulator, and the best way I can describe this is it's literally the same thing as typing num equals num whatever sign you pick plus whatever number you want to accumulate it by. So if you want to accumulate it by 1, which is very normal because when you're creating loops with in the future, there's one of the things you're going to learn is while loops, is that's going to teach you how to accumulate it, right? So if I run this, you're going to see the same thing. It's going to give us 6 because you can actually set this variable equal to this itself, because like if I printed out that, it would just literally give us the number 5. It doesn't make much sense when you think about it, but you're basically saying num is equal to num, 5 is equal to 5. So that's okay. But then if you add something to it, like say you wanted to go minus num, right, what you're going to get is you're going to get 0, because 5, you're going to get 5 equals 5 minus 5, or num equals 5 minus 5, and that's 0. So there's just tons of different things you can do. Like I said, you can also use the multiplication sign here with this, and if you do that times 5, which will get us 25, because you're accumulating this by 5. I mean, multiplying it by 5 with the accumulator. Every time, like that's what it's used for in loops, is every time you loop once, you want to accumulate, usually to keep track of how many loops are being done. So this is the most usual you'll see is plus something. So plus 1 usually, or something like that, to just create an accumulator. Okay, so on to the last thing is we're going to go over the different types of errors that you're going to see probably as a beginner. I think there's a couple more, but these are usually the ones you're going to see. Right off the bat, you can actually see one right here that we got previously. And I'm going to go over them in order, right? But if you see, basically, you know how you have to type out the word, how you type out hello world, like the print statement, not the string, but you see how I had to put these parentheses around this, and when I run this, it's going to give us hello world. But now say I forgot to put these parentheses here. Okay, now when I run this, it's going to give me invalid syntax. Some other IDEs actually say invalid syntax here. An IDE is just basically what one of these types of things you're using. It means integrated development environment. It basically is all the different types of, like this is one right here. It's whatever you use the code. So as you can see, it actually gave us a little red mark telling us where the error is located. Sometimes they're a little hard to find, but as long as they tell you, like some of the other IDs like PyCharm, and they actually give you a pretty good idea of where it'll tell you the exact line. It'll tell you what the error is, what caused it, and then it'll help you fix it. Okay, but they're a lot more complicated to get into. This is just an easy thing. Okay, so now we have the name error, because we're almost done here. I'm sorry if I've taken a long time, but okay, but the num, I'm going to try to finish up. Okay, so the name error, sorry. So say if I name this variable num equals 1, and then I try to print it, and like I did earlier, what if I spell num wrong, right? When I try to print that, it's going to give me a name error because this variable is not defined anywhere. I haven't defined it anywhere. So if I come down here and I come up here and I define it and I set it equal to true or whatever I want to do, then you'll see that it will be printed to the console. But when it doesn't exist, I'm gonna comment that out just because we haven't got to use the comment out in this video yet. And you'll see it's just not defined. So if you see name error, usually it means that you named something wrong. You just go back and check your code, because sometimes, like say earlier, how you'll have something called name num1 and you'll have the other one num2, num3. You might just forgot to change it to num4 if you're copying and pasting and stuff like that when you're copying code and trying to make more code. Okay, so now we have a value error. First I'm going to go over indentation error. So no, I guess I can go over value error. A value error is created when, I can actually show you. So I believe this is a value error if I'm correct, because I kind of forgot, not gonna lie. So num1 equals 5 plus high. I believe this right here would give us a value error. No, that's a type error. Okay, so yeah, basically a value error is created, I believe, when you. I'm gonna, just in case I remember, I'm gonna go to the indentation error because that one's easy. Sorry, this video's been long. I'm kind of having a brain fart over here. Here, let me just look it up real quick because I'm having a brain fart. Type error. Can't convert integer object to string. Oh. Okay, so can't convert it. Where is it? Oh, okay. Yeah. That's basically what I just tried to do. So 2 plus 2. If I run that, you'll see that it's going to give you. It's calling it a type error, but that's the exact same thing he just did. I guess type error is just another name for value error. But yeah, that's basically what it is if you try to add two things that aren't compatible to be added to each other, or like added, subtracted, or whatever you want it, whatever you're trying to do. And then you have something called your indentation error. This is pretty self-explanatory. If it's Python is something called case sensitive. So if I want to say hello world, but I want to print out the rest over here. Say I want to print out world down here with a plus sign. I mean with a exclamation point. What you're going to see is that if I accidentally put a space here, right, what you'll get is an indentation error. And you'll see this more a lot. You usually won't. It'll say syntax error, but that it is an indentation error. Most other IDEs actually call it an indentation error. Like if I go space, it should give you an indentation error, but it's going to call it a syntax error with this IDE. I think that's what type error was doing. Is I think it was throwing a type error, even though the one I was using previously was calling it a value error. So yeah, basically that's what it is. You'll see it later on more. You usually won't have a problem with stuff like this, but if you're copying, pasting code, you need to remember if you're going to use tabs. So if you press tab in Python, it goes over it quite a lot. It's generally, if you're gonna use tab, don't space 2, because it can cause indentation errors and it won't even look like there's a problem. So just try to stick to one. If you're using it on one line, just try to use tab the entire time, because tab is the best way to do it, and you're going to see that later on. It makes it super easy to format your code into little blocks and little chunks. Alright, well, this video has been long enough. It's gotten to the point where my brain is fried. Alright, well, if you guys enjoyed the video, please like and subscribe. And, well, actually first, before I end the video, is I forgot one thing, and that is I want to give y'all a quiz. Okay, so you guys can pause this video or whatever you want to do and just take some time to look over this and give an answer, and just give your answer, I guess, in the comment section. And if you got this and you haven't never done Python before and you did it completely perfectly, then congrats to you. And come see me again next episode. I'm gonna have the next episode is gonna be a little more in depth. It's gonna be a little more challenging, hopefully not as long, but for you guys, I don't really mind it. But all right, you guys have a great day, and I'll see y'all next time. All right, peace out.